In this jungle guide, I will be going over 4 more exercises that will make you be a better jungler, as well as being a follow-up to the 4 exercises I released in a video like this last year. So I will stitch these 2 together nicely for you, and hopefully with both of them combined, you'll have 8 strong exercises that you can use along with all the knowledge in these videos to then apply to your game, become a better jungler, to carry, win, and climb. And if you're struggling to understand these principles and how to apply them to your own game, I've increased the coaching capacity on my Patreon, so feel free to click that link. And if you simply want to watch the coaching, there are almost 100 VODs available there as well. And in last year's video, the 4 exercises really centered around fundamentals that a lot of people weren't doing, and I was noticing they weren't doing in coaching, and I was kind of prescribing these exercises, so I figured, hey, why not make a video out of it? And these are exercises that people have used in my coaching to get to gold, to get to diamond, yes, even to get master tier plus. So I can almost guarantee that you will have improvement from applying them. Right, first off, obviously, we're going to talk about something that's a little bit weird, but it's very important for you. Not just camera movement in general, but using your camera to gain information on the map that you are 100% missing. Look at this example from live coaching. I mentioned, hey, look, this thing is happening in top lane and we should respond. And in the review, the player said they were thinking about going to wolves before I mentioned this. When he recognized it, we got a good playoff, but the window for mistake will be really small the higher rank you are. So a lot of you are struggling to actually get this information. How can we actually and actively improve it? Well, take whatever software you have for recording your own point of view when you're playing, whether that's simply OBS, using insights.gg, it doesn't really matter. I want you to go and skim it very, very quickly and count how many times in the first 5 minutes that you click off your character to look around the map to gather information. Doesn't matter even if it's a little bit. If you are not on the camera and you click somewhere else, count how many times it happens in the first 5 minutes, the first 10 minutes, and the first 15 minutes. This is now your baseline, and yes, if you're like me and you love using the minimap and staring at it for information, that's great, but when I see something happen on the minimap, I'm either F-keying or clicking to see what's actually happening, because I can only take so much information from looking at the minimap. However many times you clicked around the map in those early phases, I want you to plus that by 5. And that's your target for the next week. After that, you add another 5, so basically looking at 10 more times clicking around the map. Make it a small, actionable, and easy to track amount, so that basically when you go into the game now, you're tracking how many times you're clicking around the map. In the first 5 minutes, make sure you are not looking at yourself at least 5 times. This might not feel and look like much to you, but if you're not doing it at all, it will really change the way you play the game, because if you notice something on the minimap and now you click, that's 1. If nothing's really happening in the game and you actually kind of want to see what's going on in the lanes, maybe your bottom lane, all the icons fused together over the top of each other, have a click, see what someone is a burn, see what's actually going on. If you don't do that, you're not getting all the information you need to make the right ganking assessment, to make the right rotations, and to be able to make the right plays. I mean, how can you go for a tower dive on the top lane if you have no idea about their HP, their sums, their spells, where the waves are? And that's why a lot of low elo, mid elo players simply do not dive. They don't have the information. Whereas if you did, because you clicked around, the top side while you were on the bottom side, oh, I guess now I actually know I can sequence up and do that dive. And then from 5 to 10 minutes, you do another 5 times, and from 10 to 15, you do another 5 times. And then after this week, if you hit all your targets, and I want you to count and look at your VOD reviews to actually get that right, now we can say, right, let me try and do that 10 times, maybe even 20 times eventually. You're building up. Obviously, there will be a point of no return where it becomes ridiculous. From a scale of 0 to LS, we are trying to reach an amount that even the mechanically inept of us can actually do. And sometimes, if all you can manage is really 10 times in the first 5 and then 10 times in 5 to 10, that's fine, because you will gain a lot of information that you can use to add to your tracking, which we talked about last year and in the tracking video, to add to your ganking recognition, which we talked about last year. So really, this core principle works extremely well when you add it to the exercises from last year. And obviously, you can apply this minimap and F key clicking to your pressing tab as well. It's all about information gathering and training yourself to make that a habit for the long term. Now, the next thing is very interesting, and I want you all to do it 100%. Have you ever had a game where you just absolutely giga-smurfed it, but your bot lane permanently inted and you lost? Of course you have. Did you have the same when maybe mid lane inted or top lane inted? Maybe all 3 lanes inted. But you had high KP, a good KDA, farmed well, and you think, well, my lane is just suck. Well, I play bot lane as well. I've also played top lane, and I've also played mid lane, and I've had many games where I've done very well, but my KDA looks shit, my jungler is flaming me for inting even though I'm not, and the whole reason that this is happening is because of my jungle. Now, I'm not saying I don't play badly, of course I do, every laner does, every jungler plays badly too, we all have bad games. I'm talking about the games where your jungler directly affects you without directly affecting you. And of course, this works vice versa as well, so what I want you to do is open up the VOD review, the .raffle file, the replay, of when you actually had this feeling. Now, only watch the VOD from the perspective of your laners. Stare at the minimap, look at what you're doing, you know what you did, you know why you did what you did, I hope. And now I'm not talking about the fact that they straight up lose 2v2, that happens. I'm not talking about the fact that they maybe died to 1 or 2 jungler ganks. I want you to ask yourself, what could I have done at any moment to impacted this lane before I decided to complain about them? A great example is, well, you reset and went bottom side and you didn't gank before doing the dragon. You didn't gank before doing your bottom lane farm. You didn't track the enemy jungler and counter gank them when they showed a bot lane, even though you could have. If the enemy jungler was ganking bot lane and you were on the same side and just sequencing up, why didn't you track him and counter gank him? This can play very heavily into why your bot lane is feeding, losing, and feeling a little bit annoyed about the jungle impact. Now, should they be trading if the enemy jungler is pathing in that direction and not paying attention to it? No, but they do this in Challenger, my friends. Challenger laners die to these things. The thing is, Challenger junglers know exactly how to punish those things using the outside in rule, using tracking, using the advanced pathing video I put out on Wednesday. I want you to try and understand the game from their perspective, because not a lot of us have time to actually play every role. You should play every role, and back in the day before we had positional select, we had to, but now junglers are really in a cocoon. They only have to jungle. Very rarely do you have to play another role. This means that while you can be snowballing top lane and doing things top lane and abusing the enemy jungler, the other feeding lane, you have to consider, what could I have done to help them? How could I have played around this lane to actually support it and snowball it while still affecting every lane? And that's why when I make those videos about ganking everywhere, about being all over the map, about having high kill participation, it's about this particular principle. How can I affect lanes without leaving them out to dry unnecessarily? Obviously, inting lanes, yeah, they deserve to die. If they're really trolling and you could do nothing about it and it's super losing so you can't gank it, I'm not telling you to run it down to a Renekton who's super fed and die 2v1. I'm simply talking about within the flow of the game you played, considering you played so well. What could you have done before you farmed, after you farmed? What could you have done to save them or at least prevent the enemy jungler getting shit done? And that's the biggest thing. Your goal as a jungler is also to prevent the enemy jungler from accomplishing the same things you are doing. And if you're failing at that, and they are impacting lanes and getting more fed than you, and their laners are snowballing from that, then it falls to you. What could you have done as the jungler to impact lanes? So yes, that is your homework. Go to a game where you felt you did well, and look at how you could have impacted lanes. It won't always be obvious, but simply play it from their perspective and their feelings, and understanding that, hey, I just got ganked for the third or fourth time, what's my jungler doing about it? And then you basically ask yourself, well, actually, that's a good question. What am I doing about it? And from here, you will begin to understand, at least to a certain degree, the impact you have as a jungler all over the map. And I'm sure you can see from some of the footage, yeah, it's great if a jungler shows up, but if they just run it down and die to the laners, and the rest of the time the enemy mid and enemy jungler are ganking, and you're really doing nothing to totally offset that. Why doesn't mid have a herald down mid lane with all those plates taken? Why aren't we counter jungling and basically taking all the camps away from the enemy jungler? And that's why I make the videos I make, the outside in rule, making sure you have equal and opposite plays. It's not necessarily just about getting yourself fed, it's about offsetting the plays of the enemy jungler and allowing you to control the game so that no lane truly ints if they just play it normally. And again, I can't believe I have to say this, I don't mean the games where they actually troll you. And as you can see, it's not always obvious, but applying the information I give you in the videos within the context of why we need to do things is so important. Next up, we really do need to practice our smite combos. How can we do this? It's pretty simple, ladies and gentlemen. You go into practice tool and you basically level up your smite, you get some itemization, you practice 450 smites, you practice 900 smites, but you practice them while doing it with an ability. So, Nunu, do we smite Q or do we Q smite? Obviously you Q smite, there's a channel time to your abilities. A lot of you struggle to secure objectives, buffs, dragons, barons, because you get flustered, and all you are doing is actually just trying to smite the 900, trying to time the 450. That doesn't matter if you can combine an ability with large amounts of damage, and most junglers can do this with a smite. I mean, you've got the Nunu Q consume, you've got the Rengar savagery, you've got the Rek'Sai true damage bite, you've got the Warwick's Q. They all have different animation cast times, they all have different amounts of damage, but you can all press them and press smite so that the animation and the smite hit at the exact same time, which means you should never lose or be unable to secure barons, dragons, and buffs against a weaker enemy jungler. So please go into practice tool, buy some items, practice it at different level spikes, get 1 item, 2 items, 3 items, spawn a herald, spawn a dragon, and yes, I'm actually working on a special website with all these kinds of drills and tools, but that will take time to develop, so for now, practice tool is your best friend. And yeah, the reason I'm putting this in here is because I had a challenger Kha'Zix miss a Q smite combo and lose a crucial dragon soul point in a VOD review in one of my gameplays. It was a very tragic day, but if he simply Q'd and timed the smite with the animation of the Q hitting the dragon, we'd have a free soul and a free win, but hey, life is hard sometimes. And now briefly for the final exercise here, I want to put in something that I used in the bootcamp a couple months ago, really part of the daily missions where I'd give target goals and exercises for people to use to become better junglers. And it's not quite something like the rest of this video, but hopefully you can listen, learn, and apply this to a mission this week and become better at the following principle. What I want you to do in today's mission is, what are we, day 4? Okay, we've talked about tracking, we've talked about clearing, we've talked about a whole bunch of other things in the lectures and the missions, and one of the most fun things for me to talk about in my coaching and in my videos is enemy jungle denial and removal. Firstly, obviously, we're going to build on our tracking knowledge that we would have gained in the previous day's missions. And essentially, what we're looking for is early vision level 1. And I want you to try and get this and be a little bit brazen about it. I don't want you to go straight up inting, but if you can get any sort of deep wards, or at the very least a pixel brush ward, yeah, 100% early, just to make sure we can get some early tracking on the enemy jungler, I want you to try and remove the enemy jungler from the game by creating a lot of invade pressure. Now, this will shift based upon the matchups that you're playing. For example, if you're playing it with a Karthus, who's going to do obviously this kind of nonsense. Wow, so exciting, okay? You can still punish this thusly, and I have done, and you would have seen in the jungle tracking lecture, I have done this as well. You can simply do essentially whatever sort of 3 camp you might want to do, and then you can sort of cruise on around and try and get that 245 invade on their red. Try and move them from the game in that sense. And now, it doesn't end there, does it? Because if you push them out of their jungle here, all right, what you're going to see is, and this obviously should be pink again, not very good at swapping the colors, there you go, nice and scribbly. They're most likely going to be now going out of the base for this crab, they've got this second gromp, they got this wolf, but if you do this well, what's going to happen is there's too much of a timer between their death and their second gromp and their second wolves. So they're going to be a little bit stuck about what to do, and how we keep that pressure up is by not necessarily watching our lanes as much. In this case, you're playing a little bit for yourself in these games, and that's what I'm trying to drive home here, trying to get you to see what happens when you play for yourself a little bit more. What happens when you simply remove the enemy jungler? Yes, your laners are now in a bit of a coin flip state. So as you leave this environment, can we, let's just delete some of this, can we from this invade, perhaps, gank top lane, still get a crab, drive by mid lane, still contest this crab, and then make sure that the enemy jungler essentially exists only within their plane of their jungle. Okay, and in Friday's lectures, tomorrow's lectures, we're going to talk about how to play from behind. So if you are in this situation as a Karthus, we will talk about this, or as a Hecarim, as anyone basically, we will talk about what you need to do when you find yourself being, well, turbo fisted by the enemy jungler. In this case, for today's missions, you are the turbo fister. So here, by forcing them to exist in this reality, you can keep this pressure up in a very intense way. Now, Nidlee's, Graves are very, very good at this. Even Viegas Trundles can do this. I mean, and essentially the goal is for us, okay, is to swoop. Okay, that's a little bit too much of a swoop. Is to swoop the rivers and control this quadrant. These two quadrants, make sure that they are stuck within it. And if possible, if we're tracking them properly and we understand what they're going to do, and they don't have good practices that we'll again talk tomorrow, you should have no issue pushing them out of the jungle, getting 20, 30 CS leads. There's a lot of invading here. You must pay attention to lane prior. Okay, this is not blind nonsense. You must pay attention to lane prior. But if your lanes are pushed back in and you try and go for these plays, watch them, watch the rotation, see who can rotate first, see who can help you. Don't be an idiot. It's not what I'm asking you to do. But I just want you to focus very actionably on removing the enemy jungler from the game as best you can, given the map state that you will have. Now, if you do happen to get a nice invade on the second buff here, transition that as appropriately, and then you're able to push out of here, considering maybe your bot lane has prior or whatnot, that's great. Even if you can't necessarily follow through and get some kills here, what you can do, all right, is at the very least, push them out. If you cannot, you still have the ability as a Nidlee's Graves to wall hop, drift across mid lane. Hopefully we've created prio. That's the whole point of this event here, running across with double crab, is to create prio, burning flashes, getting a chunk, getting a gank off. You're trying to create mid prio for yourself, because mid prio for yourself here is absolutely crucial. You really want mid prio for this kind of play. And then what you can do is you can swoop across, knowing that the enemy jungler now has died, has come down, has been, either they secure these or get pushed off, or you kill them again as you will. They could hold mid lane in theory, but they're now transitioning back into the side of the map. And our job here isn't to focus on our camps. This is reward. Okay, these are rewards for the good work we're doing. So here you can just kind of push them off tier 2 Gromp, push them off tier 2 Wolves, cut across mid lane again, and now you can move in to invade this, you can move in to invade this. And again, by extension, what does this provide us as a jungler? Well, if you're here for counter jungling, here for invades, here for counter jungling, here for invades, look at the angles. Ooh, nice. Ooh, nice. Ooh, you see this? Look at all the angles it gives you, okay, to look at bot lane ganks, top lane dives. This is not even all the angles. We could just draw all the angles for the different champions. It gives you a really nice zone to gank all the lanes while removing the enemy jungler. And please do this. Firstly, get yourself in a position, early tracking, push the enemy jungler out of their jungle, try and suppress them for as many rotations as you can. Obviously, you've got to back in the meantime, but track where they're going to be going, use your tracking skills that you've developed, and essentially just remove them from the game, okay? And then use that to influence your lanes, fall back to your camps, and obviously you can quadrant clear as you're doing your business. Just don't let them ever rest easy on their camps. Their camps are your camps. Your camps are the dessert, okay? So that's what you need to do today. Best of luck. Pay attention to lane priority. Don't int too much, but definitely limit test how much you can suppress the enemy jungle and maybe try get 4 level leads. And there you have it, 4 good exercises for you to become a better jungler. They're not always cut and dry, they're not always sexy, and they're not always easy. But if you put in the work, you put in the practice, you will improve, and you will be able to apply the principles that I put out in every video. Some of those are located in the box on the top right, and more of those are located in the box in the bottom left.